Hey everyone, and welcome back to Hoopers Nation, your top destination for NBA basketball content. There's nothing sports fans hate more than injuries. We all know they're a part of the game, but it's still terrible when an injury happens, triggering all sorts of emotions in both players and fans. Not only is it terrible for the injured player, who has to endure a lot of pain and go through rehab to overcome it, but also for fans who get robbed of watching their team rise to glory or simply from seeing one of their favorite players succeed. In this video, we'll take a look at NBA players that were badly ruined by injuries. But before we do, please make sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel for more NBA content. Number 8. Isaiah Thomas. Coming apparently out of nowhere, 5'9" Isaiah Thomas shocked the world when by the end of the 2016-17 regular season, Thomas had firmly put himself in the league MVP discussion. That was the year when Russell Westbrook averaged a triple-double for the first time, so beating him and other worthy contenders like James Harden was always going to be tough. But nobody really expected Thomas to rise up to MVP caliber status. Isaiah led his Boston Celtics to the Eastern Conference Finals, where he played through his sister's death and with a broken tooth. But it was a re-aggravation of a previous hip injury that held him out of the last 2 games of the series and eventually ruined him. 2 months before, Thomas hurt his hip in a regular season matchup against the Timberwolves, sat 2 games and shook it off. Then again in that year's Eastern Semis versus the Washington Wizards, Isaiah hurt his hip again, yet played through it. But it was in Game 2 of the conference finals when Thomas ran into a Kevin Love screen that doctors deemed him unable to compete, fearing he could hurt it even worse. Thomas sat out as the Celtics were eliminated, before being traded to the Cavaliers and then to the Lakers within the next year. After almost 12 months, Thomas finally had hip surgery, but hasn't been nearly the player he once was since. Number 7. Brandon Roy. Brandon Roy was having a magnificent NBA career until his knees gave out and he could play at a high level no more. Through Roy's first 4 seasons as a Trailblazer, he averaged over 20 points and 5 assists while shooting almost 47% from the field and 35% from 3. These were great numbers that brought the Blazers back to relevance as Roy balled out alongside a young LaMarcus Aldridge. In that period, he was also a 3-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA player, and the 2007 Rookie of the Year. His knees had always bothered him in one way or another since college, but it was never anything major. Roy underwent 2 minor surgeries in 2008 and 2009, one in each knee, before the Blazers announced early in the 2010-11 season that Roy would be out indefinitely. His knees were ailing due to a lack of cartilage, undergoing arthroscopic surgery in both knees before returning as a reserve, but by then, he wasn't the same. Roy announced his retirement before the start of the next season, but then attempted to make a comeback in 2012, signing with the Timberwolves. He played only 5 games before the Wolves waived him, as Roy didn't have enough to compete at the highest level anymore. Number 6. DeMarcus Cousins. His career might not be over yet, but it isn't a stretch to say DeMarcus Cousins had cemented himself as the best center in the league before a career-altering left Achilles tear destroyed him. He was then teammates with fellow superstar big man Anthony Davis as a member of the New Orleans Pelicans, who were on quite a run but struggled without Boogie. A torn Achilles is dreadful for any player, but for a center that never had the quickest feet and relied on his strength to dominate, it's even worse. And sure, nobody offered Cousins any big money deals at the end of that season, so he took the Warriors' mid-level exception and signed with them. Early in the playoffs that year, Cousins tore his left quadricep, which upon return made him even slower. It's as if he could barely move at anything above average speed. His latest tragedy was a torn ACL in preseason workouts after he signed with the Lakers in 2019. He hasn't returned to the court since, and if he does, he won't be nearly as good as he once was. Number 5. Yao Ming. One of the most popular and charismatic players to ever step foot on an NBA court, Yao Ming had a huge impact on the league's popularity increase in China with his dominant play. Standing at 7'6", Yao was so tall and so strong that it was nearly impossible to guard him. He was an Iron Man through his first 3 seasons, missing only 2 games in that period. But since then, multiple leg and foot injuries started causing troubles. His next 3 seasons were pretty successful, as he averaged 23 points, 10 rebounds, and 2 blocks. Those 3 years also featured toe osteomyelitis, a right knee fracture, a left foot stress fracture, and a rough ankle sprain. But at the end of the 2008-2009 season, a broken left foot was the start of the end for his career. He appeared in only 5 games after missing that whole season and announced his retirement on January 2011. The amount of pressure his height and weight put on his feet and legs was ultimately what made him unable to play longer. But he will always be remembered for his imposing frame and dominant length. Number 4. Grant Hill. Don't get us wrong, Grant Hill had a long, successful career and averaged double-digit scoring every season except for his last one as a bench veteran with the LA Clippers in 2013. But if he had had a solid career fighting a 2000 ankle injury that would never stop bothering him, we can't imagine how much better he could have been if he had been fully healthy. Through his first 6 seasons, he averaged 22 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists in a period that included 5 All-NBA selections and 5 All-Star games that would have easily been 6. But the 1998-1999 season had no All-Star weekend due to it being shortened by the 1999 lockout. Hill injured his ankle in a game 1 week before the 2000 playoffs, and further aggravated it playing through the injury in the first round. He left the Pistons that offseason and signed with Orlando, but his bad ankle injury made him start his Magic tenure with the left foot. No pun intended. Throughout the next 6 seasons, Grant would go on to play only 135 out of 492 possible games, missing over 4 full seasons worth of games. He was still scoring at a solid rate, but he sadly never lived up to the potential he showed as a Piston. Number 3. Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson didn't exactly suffer from an injury that ruined his career. In fact, he has one of the most decorated careers in NBA history and is widely considered the best point guard of all time. But right before the start of the 1991-92 season, a physical examination determined Johnson had tested positive for HIV. The announcement sent shockwaves through not only the league, but the whole country, and Johnson was forced to retire. Despite his condition, he was still voted to play in the 1992 All-Star Game and did so even amid some concerns from other NBA players. Johnson also played with the 1992 Dream Team in the Olympics and won a gold medal. Magic had a short comeback in 1996 when he played 32 games for the Lakers. He still wanted to continue playing, but again, concerns about the risk of him infecting fellow players made him choose to retire. Magic looked pretty good on the court in his 1996 comeback, which makes us wonder how much bigger would his legacy be had he been able to complete a full, healthy, and lengthy career. In 2011, Magic said that, had he known back then what he knows now about HIV, he would have never retired. But he opted to do so at the time because he didn't want to hurt the game. Number 2. Penny Hardaway. Speaking of really good oversized point guards, Penny Hardaway is another player who struggled thanks to his problematic knee issues. Through his first 4 seasons in the league, Penny averaged 20 points, 7 assists, and 5 rebounds, while making 3 All-Star teams and 3 All-NBA teams, 2 of which were All-NBA first selections. But before the 1997-98 season, Hardaway suffered a devastating left knee injury that cost him much of the season and required surgery. He returned for the 1999 lockout season and played in all 50 games, albeit showing less explosiveness and a much slower first step. Per a demand from Jason Kidd, the Suns traded for Hardaway in the 1999 offseason, forming a backcourt with very high expectations. But before starting the 2000 NBA season, Hardaway underwent 2 microfracture surgeries in his left knee that were the final nail in his career's coffin. His shooting splits fell off, and he was pulled from the starting lineup after he came back, before bouncing around several teams and finally retiring in 2007. Penny was on his way to becoming an all-time great point guard, but injuries held him back. Number 1. Derrick Rose. The player you've all been waiting for, pretty much everybody's familiar with Derrick Rose's story. He went from a 3-time All-Star, All-NBA, and youngest league MVP in history to constant rehab. Just after winning the 2011 MVP, Rose signed a 5-year, $95 million contract with the Bulls for 30% of the salary cap, following what became known as the Derrick Rose rule. Unfortunately, in the Bulls' first game of the 2012 playoffs, Rose tore his ACL and missed the whole ensuing season. For a player that relied so much on his elite athleticism and speed, an ACL tear was arguably the worst injury that could have happened to him. Still, he didn't look too bad in the 10 games he played upon his return in the 2013-2014 season, but as destiny would have it, Rose tore his right knee meniscus in November 2013 and was again out for the whole season. He tore that exact same meniscus again on February 2015, and by that point, Rose was not nearly his old MVP caliber player self. In April 2017, Rose once again tore his meniscus, but this time in the left knee. Rose has also suffered other minor injuries throughout his career, but it was the 4 knee surgeries he underwent that did the most damage. Still, to this day, Rose continues to push forward despite suffering injury after injury, and even exploded for a career-high 50 points in October 2018. He has one of the saddest, but also most inspiring stories in NBA history, and is perhaps the biggest what-if when it comes to injuries. Which other players do you think were ruined by injuries? Which player had the worst injury of them all? Make sure to comment your thoughts down below, as well as leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.